It had been a day of planning. Katie discovered that when you put a mattress on the floor, there isn't much room left to play. And Orbie found out that having someone sleep over feels like a party. And they both learned that it's important to cook what the guests like so they feel welcome. Ara and Micah were coming to stay for the weekend. Mom was very excited because Ara was her best friend, and Katie and Orbie were excited because Micah was one of their best friends too. Soon they drove up and everybody got a hug. Once Micah had placed his bag in Katie's room and everybody had caught up with the news, the three friends decided that the best way to start their visit was with a trip to the park. Orbie raced ahead to get swings for them, and Katie and Micah walked behind with Mom and Ara. Katie waved at some of her friends and they all waved back. Micah waved too, even though he didn't know them all. Mom told them that she and Ara were going to walk along the paths in the park, keeping an eye on them. The three friends waved and jumped on the swings. Micah tried hard to swing as high as Katie and Orbie, but it was not as easy for him. Orbie leapt off of his swing and gave him a push. Micah smiled and thanked Orbie as he flew through the air. Some kids that usually don't play in Katie and Orbie's park were watching. They were thinking how strange it was that a big boy like Micah was having trouble swinging. The three friends didn't notice as they moved to the climber. Orbie scampered up and so did Katie. Micah followed behind, but he wasn't quite as fast, so they had to wait for him. Some of the new kids were laughing at Micah, and that made Orbie feel angry. It was very rude to laugh at people. When he looked to see if Micah was upset with them, he realized that Micah was concentrating so hard and climbing up, he hadn't even heard. Katie didn't like the other children laughing either. They were pointing at Micah, and pointing was rude too. As Micah stood up at the top of the climber, he had a great big smile on his face. He was happy to have made it up. When he looked at his two friends and saw that they weren't smiling, he stopped. He turned and looked at the new children. As he did, one very rude one shouted out, "Hey, dummy!" Katie wanted to cry because that was so mean. Orbie wanted to fly down and tell the boy to leave the playground. But Micah just shouted back. He said, "Dummy is not my name." Katie, Orbie, and Micah decided it was no fun to play in the park if there were mean people there. Orbie hurried over to Mom and burbled what had happened. Ara looked at Micah, who was still smiling. He explained that the kids didn't know his name. Ara sat down on the grass with her arms around Micah. She told Katie and Orbie that she was sorry those children had been so mean. She also told them that as his very best friends, they could help him a bit. Katie wondered how, and Orbie had a few ideas, but they weren't very nice. Ara explained that not all children saw that Micah had Down syndrome. And to someone that hadn't met anybody with the syndrome, he looked different. Orbie knew all about looking different, and he swallowed hard. Ara leaned toward Katie and Orbie. Micah leaned in too. "The thing you have to do," she told them, "is to tell the other children that he is your friend. Tell them that you don't like it when they call him names, and that you just won't let them do that." "I'll tell them dummy is not my name," Micah said. Ara smiled and kissed him. She told him he was a brave guardian against ignorance. Micah beamed, and Katie and Orbie didn't know what that meant. Ara and Mom and all the friends headed towards the playground. Ara explained that it meant that Micah had to be tough and not feel hurt but work at helping people to understand. It wasn't easy, but if his friends helped him, that soon people would learn that he's just a wonderful person and you should get to know him. Different isn't anything to be afraid of. Katie couldn't imagine people being afraid of Micah. Mom explained it was because people just don't know any better. Katie linked her arm through Micah's. She told him that she was going to tell every one of those kids about him. Micah smiled. "Thanks," he said. The two moms sat under the tree and chatted as Katie, Orbie, and Micah set off to play again. This time, when the other kids came over and tried to call Micah dummy, Orbie smiled very warmly at them. He burbled that they didn't know his friend Micah, but they should because he's great. Katie added that he was an excellent drummer, just so they'd know. One boy did turn away and tell his friends that he wasn't playing in this park. But the other two said hi to Micah. Micah asked if they wanted to play. They looked at each other and agreed they did. They played a game of the Angry Giant, and they had a rung-hanging contest that rolled down the hill till they all got dizzy. By the end of the afternoon, nobody noticed that Micah was different. All they noticed was that they'd had fun. They apologized to Micah for calling him dummy, and he smiled. "It's all right," he said, "because when people make a mistake, it's important to forgive them." That night, when everybody was snuggling up for a story, Katie told Micah how proud she was of him. Micah told her he was proud of her, too. It was hard to show people how to understand new things, and she was very good at it. And so was Orbie. As Mom opened the book, Katie told them that one little boy didn't learn about Micah. Ara told her that maybe one day Katie would get another chance with him, or maybe even his friends would help him learn not to be afraid. When they were all nestled up in their beds, Orbie burbled that he was going to be a guardian against ignorance, just like Micah. Katie said to count her in two. And do you know that if you have a friend that is special, you need to stand up and be a guardian against ignorance too. And if you do, maybe very slowly, but for certain, things will change. And soon the world will be a nicer place for all the special people who live in it.